I just want to start with an announcement so that everyone can know. Next week, I will be in New York for my niece's wedding, so there won't be a class next week. Thank you. So there won't be a class next week, and I'll try to make sure a reminder goes out. Okay, so let's start. Dedication for the Refuah Shlema of Yehudis Leib ben Gittel Fega. Tonight's learning is dedicated in memory of Shua Polanski, Zichrona Levracha. May his neshama have an aliyah. Just that you know that last I saw, the Lighthouse Project was running a fundraiser for a young man. You can see a picture of him here. So he has a wife and kids. So they're running a fundraiser to help. And may they live a long life for the Refuah Shlema of Menachem Mendel ben Sorobatya and the Avrohom Fega bat Rezel. Speaking of Rezel, I'd like to also add on the name of my niece, Rezel Katzman, in honor of her marriage to Avi Baumgart. Okay? Thank you. Okay, so this week's title, Creating Good Luck, the Art of Pottery. Okay? Lottery? No. How cute. Yeah, no. It's about making a vessel. We'll soon see. Okay, so one of life's greatest challenges is our frustration in not being successful, which often bleeds over into jealousy and resentment. I mean, like really. You have no idea how sometimes, I'm driving and I see some little teenager pull up on the side of me with one of these fancy schmancy Lexus SUVs. I'm like, really, God? Yeah, pours over. It's human nature sometimes. Thank you, sir. So, yes, I want to just be brief because I want to run into the class, because what I'm going to say now in the next 2 paragraphs is 3 classes by itself. So I just want to move along quickly with it. There is a concept of effort. Effort in Hebrew is called hishtadlut. You have no idea how many classes, and the mystery still remains unresolved about the conflict between hishtadlut and emunah. Concept between effort versus faith and acceptance. We need to get over the human perception of that contradiction. We need to get past the human perception of a simple Mishnah in Ethics of Our Fathers. Who is rich? He who is happy with his lot. We need to get over the human conception of that Mishnah, because we're really misconstruing the Mishnah. Should I start up with the Democrats who live by this Mishnah? So where's the issue here? On one hand, that's what the Mishnah says, right? It's in Pirkei Avot. I mean, how can you not say that? And yet we have a very wrong human perception of the contradiction between being happy with our lot and wanting to go further and succeed more. There's the human contradictions. When we get past all the human perception of, let's list it all out here, effort, faith, acceptance, wealth, and happiness, when we get through the human perception of what these mean, we will then see in God's world, they're all true. God wants us to have hishtadlut, effort, with emunah and acceptance, with faith and acceptance. God wants us to be happy with our lot of the present, and yet God wants us to strive to fully reach all the riches that our God-given talents and capacities allow for. There is no contradiction. The contradiction is in the human mind. Well, if you're happy with what you have, then you don't have to fight for more. Or if you have faith that this is what Hashem said, so why are you trying for bigger hishtadlut? You have to do a little hishtadlut, a little bit of effort. So really, it's only the human mind that struggles with any contradictions here. In God's world, there's no contradiction, and the answer to all of them is yes. Okay? Now, nevertheless, I want to talk to you now for a moment of this was spiritual words, right? Let's talk about non-spiritual words. The non-spiritual words would be effort, talent, and luck. Luck. There is luck. It's interesting, as we were getting out of the car, I was just talking to Delphine about the Midas touch. That guy has the Midas touch. We don't look at it as the curse of the real story. Whatever he touches turns to gold. Whatever I turns to potatoes. That's a luck thing. And that's the luck that we struggle with. We feel that we're putting in the effort, but we just don't have luck. So our effort isn't bringing back the returns that other people who put less effort have huge returns. So I want to just talk about the word luck for a second. The word luck, by the way, is defined in the Talmud. In my notes, I quote to you 2 statements in the Talmud. One is from Tractate Moed Katan, one is from Tractate Shabbat. And it says over there, 2 quotes. B'mazlo talya. Wealth and poverty, amongst other things, depends upon luck. And huge conversations in the Talmud. And this is the luck that frustrates me. Because if I believe in luck, then all the effort I'm going to put is like running on ice. How come that person, forget about the luck if you're born into wealth or you marry into wealth, that's a different story. But let's say not. We both came from the same economic circles. This person ends up working 3 hours a day and it turns into gold. This person ends up working 70-hour weeks and barely makes it. What's going on here? So yes, we do accept that it's about luck. The Talmud accepts that. But we need to define what luck is. So you should know that in the Talmud, when we talk about mazal, the word mazal, luck, refers to mazalot. Mazalot is the constellations. When the Talmud at the end of Shabbat, one of the places I quote, by page 156, side A, and continue on there, you'll see it talks about who is born on Sunday, who's born on Monday. This one is born under this mazal, this one's born under this mazal, a constellation called Edom, red. So this person is more of a murderer, and therefore such a person who has a pull because of the constellation of mazal he was born under should try to become a shochet, a ritual slaughterer, a mohel. It talks about certain inclinations that's driven by mazal. So therefore, when we talk about this concept of luck, you should know that it's real. And what it means is that the spiritual celestial beings, the way they align, which affects the physical celestial beings and orbits, stars, constellations, they're real. They define certain luck. And therefore you should know that that is a true study of astrology. And if you want to know who studied true astrology, Abraham. Abraham was clearly an astrologist. So much so, if you look in the Torah portion in Genesis, we see that when God talks to Abraham, Abraham knows that he's learned through astrology that Avram and Sarai will not be having children. So when God gives him a blessing, what does the verse say? He took him outside. He, capital H, took him, Avrohom, outside. And Rashi says, well, why did God have to talk to him outside? What was wrong in the tent? So Rashi says these words. God told Avraham, go out of your zodiac knowledge. It is true. Celestial orbits and constellations are the reflection of spiritual orbits and constellations. And thus mazalot are real. Astrology is real. Not the one that you find on the column in the newspaper, nor the one that you pay $4 for a minute. That's not real. That's the luck of the person on the other side of the phone, making $4 a minute. But in reality, there is such a thing as mazalot. Luck is real. And it's predestined astrological luck. But what is Hashem telling Avram? And God took Avram outside and he told him, go out. I know what you're seeing in the very creation patterns that I created. But you should know that there's something greater than that. There's something greater than that. Thus, what you're seeing is true, but you can go further than that. By the way, it actually says that in the Talmud. In one of the conversations where Rabbi Hanina talks about mazal, what is the answer that he receives? The other person says, En mazal Yisrael. There's no mazal to Israel, to Jews. And Chassidus, we're going to talk about this later, Chassidus says, read it correctly. Ayin, the ultimate nothingness, the essence, the source of all sources, that is the mazal for the Jews. And when you're dealing with the author of the book and the master of the will, there is no predefined. But what we're talking about right now is that there definitely is an opinion, and predominantly so, that luck decides whether you're going to make money or not. And it lists another whole thing. Rav Chanina lists a whole bunch of stuff there, not just money. This is the luck that frustrates us. But then we hear that there's something more powerful than that luck. There's something more powerful than the preordained orbits, the astrological luck, mazal, that controls our lives and our destiny. To understand that, we're going to talk about a verse in King Solomon. King Solomon says in the book of Proverbs, when he talks about the source of mazal and blessing, he says, Birkat Hashem, Hita Asher. The blessing of God is what makes rich. That's a different form of luck. Thus, when we ask the question, can we change luck? The answer is yes. How do we change luck? Now we're understanding. There's two different types of lucks. There's the preordained astrological luck, which just has to do with the orbits under which we were born, the orbits under which we work. And, okay? And then there's the other definition of luck. The other definition of luck is talking about Birkat Hashem, the blessing of God. Thus, when we talk about changing luck, what are we really talking about? We're talking about, can we change and connect, instead of to our predestined astrological luck, can we now connect with the Birkat Hashem Hita Asher Mazal? Can we change, can we connect to the luck that is all about the blessing of God? Obviously, Avrohom Avinu connected with that. Because obviously, Avrohom Avinu was focused on the zodiac, the astrological, and God told him, come out. Now we understand what God was telling him. God was telling him, yes, there is a preordained astrological, and yes, that's what you're seeing. And yes, that is the fingerprint of Mother Nature as God placed it. But nevertheless, you should know that you can go out of that. And the end of the story is that Avrohom Avinu has a baby with Sarah. That's what we're going to focus on here. Based on a teaching of the Rebbe in 1958, it's actually based on two teachings. In 1958, we're going to study exactly this concept. We're going to study the concept of how, based on the whole mystical teachings of how the Alter Rebbe was arrested on Sukkot, and then for 52 days, because 52 chapters in 53 chapters in Tanya, 52 days after Sukkot is Yutet Kislev, which is coming up next week, which was when the Alter Rebbe was released from Tsar's prison. Based on those teachings, we're going to learn how to create your new luck, which basically means how to experience what God told Avrohom Avinu. Go out of your predestined astrological luck and open yourself up to the infinite, undefined blessing of God luck. Because then you can do whatever you want, once you're into that luck. Okay? Okay. With that being said, I want to share with you on a verse. In Bayos in the shul, we always sing this verse right before we do the Aleinu. It's the end of the Ein Kalakenu piece, right? And what's the end over there? What does it say over there? It says, V'chol banayich lemudei havaya v'rav shalom banayich. Let's read it in English, okay? In English, that verse means, it's from Isaiah, and all your children shall be disciples of God, v'chol banayich lemudei havaya, and your children's peace shall increase, v'rav shalom banayich. Upon this, the Talmud says, very interesting, we once had this rule before. I don't remember how many classes ago. Remember I shared with you the rule, don't read this way, but read that way. Al tikra ella. There's a reading tradition, and there's the... So the word banayich and the word boinayich is a difference between sons and builders. So the sages say, a statement in the Talmud on this verse, Al tikra bonayich ella boinayich. Don't read children, read builders. Now we have a little question here. It says twice in the verse, your sons, your children. So which one are we talking about? You should know we're talking about the second one. In other words, let's reread the verse. And all your children shall be disciples of God, and your builders' peace shall increase. So simply speaking, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the sages, right? What is the verse really saying? So we have to understand, what is the first half saying? What's the second half saying? What does it mean when the first half says disciples of God? What does it mean, disciples of God? What it means is Talmid Chacham, the person who studies Torah. What is Torah? Torah is the wisdom of God. If Torah is the wisdom of God, by studying Torah, you become the disciple of God. Right? Simple. What is the second half saying? That these sons, i.e., are builders. Why are they builders? V'rav shalom b'nayach. They build peace. Okay? We're going to talk about this. In the words of the verse, Limudei Hashem, disciples of God, you know, in Hebrew, in English you have total different words. Student, teacher, they're two different things. But in Hebrew it all comes from the same word, of study. Talmud, Melamed. It's all different. It all depends how you use that, right? So you should know that there's two different translations to what it means, disciples of God. One interpretation means simply that these are the disciples of God because, like I said, they study Torah. When you study Torah, you're studying the wisdom of God. When you study the wisdom of God, you're the disciple of God. Here's another kicker. Rab Dov Ber, the Lipszyc Maggid, by the way, you should know, Yutet Kislev, which is the day that the Alter Rebbe was released from prison, long before that, his teacher died on that day, the Lipszyc Maggid. And before his teacher died, he said to the Alter Rebbe, this is our holiday. Later, we realized what he was meaning. The day that he passed away, the soul, that's the day that the Alter Rebbe was released. Be it as it may, the Lipszyc Maggid says like this, don't read disciples, read teachers. Do you hear what's going on here? The verse is calling us, the sages, those who study Torah, all sitting here by the table studying God's Torah now. We're not the disciples of God, we're the teachers of God. What in the world is that supposed to mean? Well, what does it mean we're the teachers of God? What are we teaching God? So let's go further with that. To understand that, we need to understand how miracles happen. The sages have miracles, and the miracles happen through Torah, through prayer, right? That's why we go to the sages, that's why we go to people who dedicate their life to the Torah. So, for example, there's a story of Choni HaMagal. You familiar with the story of Choni HaMagal? Choni the circle maker? Choni the circle maker, Israel was suffering, they didn't have rain. So what did he do? He went outside, took a stick, drew a circle around him in the ground. He said, I'm not stepping out of this circle until you send rain. And there's a whole process. First it was too light rain, there was too strong rain, until finally it was the right rain. But he did a miracle. Obviously, he changed the will of God. Moses, what did Moses do? God tells Moses these verses. Leave me because I'm going to destroy the people. Right? After the golden calf. 39 days ago, plus, we have a part of a day, we heard from God, I am God, your God, do not have any idols, don't bow to the idols. And then all of a sudden, what happens? They make a golden calf. God tells Moses, I'm going to destroy them. But he says, leave me, I'm going to destroy them. What did Moses do right away? I'm not leaving you. The Zohar says these words. He grabbed onto God's hand and God's body, so to speak, and he didn't leave him alone, didn't leave God alone until God changed his mind. And the Zohar gives the example. It's just like a person grabs a hold of his friend and leaves him. I'm not letting go of you until you change your mind. Right? There's another story. This story is an interesting story in the Talmud. It's a story about Rabbi Yeshua. They were having an argument about the laws of a certain oven, I believe it was. And a whole story happened there. First, they said that if the opinion's like me, if I'm right, that the walls cave in. Then the other one said, heaven, what are you mixing into our conversation? So the walls stopped. Then a baskol came out. A heavenly voice came out and said, so-and-so is the law. Rabbi Yeshua says, we don't heed heavenly voices when it comes to a law. A case must be decided down here. God gave us the Torah down here. And thus the power of the courthouse is down here. So they asked one of the sages, what did God say when Rabbi Yeshua said that? You know what he answered? He said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, said, Natzchuni b'ni natzchuni. You have defeated me, my sons, you have defeated me. Because God himself said that the center of the Torah universe is here and not there. And that was the whole fight between Moses and the angels, you remember. Give your Torah to the heaven. Moses answered them. Bottom line, what was the answer? Down there. So now you understand why we're calling these people the teachers of God. Let's get a little more Kabbalistic. To understand that on a Kabbalistic level, we need to know what the ineffable tetragrammaton is all about. And I use these words, ineffable tetragrammaton, it sounds very, very scholarly. But all it really means is the unspeakable, the unpronounceable four-letter name. Tetra, four-letter name. That's all it means. So what is the four-letter name? The Yud, the Hey, the Vav, the Hey. The Yud is small, the Hey is expansion, the Vav is descent, the Hey is expansion. So really the secret of the ineffable tetragrammaton, in very simple terms, is the process of evolution of the infinite light. It has to first contract into a tiny Yud, then it has to expand on a new level, then it has to descend, again the Yud with a line down makes the Vav, and then it again expands. So we're taught, there's a verse in Tehillim, Hashem Tzilcha, God is your shadow. What in the world is that supposed to mean, God is your shadow? So many of us will say God is our shadow means he's our shield. He protects us from the heat and whatever. Kabbalah and Chassidus take it literally. Tell me something. You see my hand and you see the shadow? What's moving what? Look what Hashem is saying. You should know. Everyone else says that we're a reflection from heaven. Comes along and God says no. What I do up here is a reflection of what you do down there. Because the whole purpose of creation is that you should be the one that causes the influence. Thus God is saying, I am your shadow. What does that mean to us for tonight? What that means for us tonight is that you should know that the whole process of the ineffable tetragrammaton, the whole spiritual evolution process of the infinite light is a reflection of what we do down here. We down here, how do we experience this process? Because our service to God is divided in two motions. Ebb, yearning upwards, flow, drawing downwards. Through us doing ebb and flow, we are causing God, the shadow, to respond. Which means, in other words, what's going on here? The entire ineffable tetragrammaton process of the infinite light, creating a sustenance to this world. Who's the one that's causing it? Us. Thus you understand Kabbalistically what the Maggid means when he says we're the teacher and God's our student. In other words, we are the hand and God is our shadow. We need to go further. What is the ebb and flow? What is this? So you should know, the ebb and flow, simply speaking, breaks into the three primary services, umbrellas, that covers all of Judaism. Torah study, mitzvah observance, and prayer. We're going to focus tonight on prayer, because prayer is the primary service of creating out of ourselves a vessel. If we're going to focus tonight on creating luck, in the introduction I already shared with you, creating luck means that I can go out, instead of being a vessel only to receive the predestined astrological mazal that God set up in Mother Nature. I can actually become a vessel to God's blessing above and beyond. So therefore we understand prayer is the art of making a vessel out of ourselves. So we're going to focus on prayer. I want to share with you that prayer actually has both. It has the ebb and the flow. Why? Ebb means from below to above. When I am praying about my physical needs, what am I doing? I from below am turning up to God from above. I know that you and only you are the true provider. Thus, from below, I call out to you, God, please. But there is a verse right before that Midah, which is actually magnificent. Why is it magnificent? Because where do we ask God for our needs? Only in that Midah. Before that Midah, we're saying Shema. Where do we ask God, please give us wisdom, please heal us, please give us sustenance, please bring Mashiach, please gather us together, please write tshuva, all those stuff. Where do we do it? In that Midah. A Midah is the ultimate part of prayer. Everything else is a prerequisite to prayer. The Shema is a total different mitzvah. You're supposed to read the Shema twice a day. What's the one thing we say right before the prayer of Amidah? Do you remember the verse? Right? My master, open my lips that my mouth may speak your praise. In other words, what's happening here? It's not about me talking to you about my needs. I'm asking for your needs, your praise, whatever needs of God means, we'll talk about that later, should flow through my mouth. So within prayer, you have both forms. You have from the ebb, and you have the flow. For us, primarily what we're going to talk about is that this process of prayer is how we make a vessel. Now, I want to share with you the mystical meaning of the second half of the verse, which we say don't read as children, read as builders. What does it say? V'rav shalom banayech, and your children increase peace. Here's the Kabbalistic concept. When I say, God, open up my lips and allow me to pray for your needs, so to speak. Remember, when we talk about God's needs, God chose to put himself in a vulnerable relationship with us, that he has needs and we're going to fulfill it. It's all chosen. God has no needs. But God chose for it to be so. What is the needs that God chose to be that only you and I can fulfill for him? Very simple. God created this world to be a world of darkness, a world of separation, a world of complexity. What is God asking of us to do? Reveal within the many, the oneness. Because the only true existence of all existences is the oneness of God. The oneness of God expresses itself in the multiplicity and the magnitude and the complexity of what? Of the universe. So that creates a need for God. Because from oneness became many. Thus, what is God asking us to do? Please reveal from the many one. Let's reread that verse now according to Kabbalah. V'rav shalom banayech, your sons, i.e. your builders. Why are we the builders? Because what we do in the universe is, see that to twist the words, increase peace. Increase means many, peace means one. The Zohar is going to read the verse. You should know that what the builders of God do is we build from increase, i.e. many, complexity, peace, i.e. oneness. Now you understand why our sages changed the word from sons to builders in the second half. Now we're talking about the disciples of God, but we're talking about how we transform, build from the many oneness. And how do we do that is, when we talk about increase, the whole concept of asking for needs. And before we ask for needs, we say, 1 second, before I get so self-centered with my needs, I'm angry today, I went through some issues today. Let's stop a second. Let's talk about God's needs. And all of a sudden, the 13 blessings, as we're going to see later, turns into spirituals. We talk about healing. What do we talk about healing? We talk about healing, the contraction. We talk about sustenance. What do we mean sustenance? We're talking about bringing down the ultimate revelation into this world. That's the definition of rich. Living in darkness is poor. Living in revelation of oneness and godliness, that's rich. Okay? Now that we understand all of this, I do want to share with you, and you'll see it in my notes, this is not built on one mimer, it's built on 2 mimerim. And I'm kind of flowing back and forth very freely. I think us writers call it artistic license, when we just, flow around a little bit. But you should know that in the second mimer, the Rebbe clearly says that it's the study of oral law that does this. In the first mimer, the Rebbe is talking about prayer. I'm going to focus on that for us tonight, prayer. Okay? Okay. So, let's now explore the art of pottery, making of ourselves a vessel through prayer, in which we will change our luck from the predestined astrological mazel to the Birkat Hashem mazel. In order to do this, let's go through our famous list. What are the Kabbalistic topics we need to quickly cover tonight in order to be able to explore this? Number 1, the barren mother. Dichotomy right there. Barren mother. Barren is not a mother. Mother is not barren. What does it mean when it says the barren mother? Number 2, the homemaker. Please, us males are outnumbered by the females. When I talk about a woman being a homemaker, I'm only talking about the spiritual concept of what a mother is, as you're going to hear. I am not saying that women don't belong in the market. I'm actually very pro women being in the market and men staying at home studying Torah. But anyway, let's go further. Chakika mibachutz, etching from the outside. Chakika mibipnim, etching from the inside. And the fifth topic we need to understand is 3 words and the numerical value. Yosis equals 620, Yesh equals 310, and Kana equals 150. Okay? Let's do this. Okay, let the amazement of Chassidus begin. So under the chuppah, what do? We make a bracha, right? We make 7 blessings. And number 6 of those 7 blessings, it depends. Under the chuppah you do Hagafim first, and the other ones you Hagafim last. So we're talking about under the chuppah. It's number 6. Right? What do we say over there? Yosis alayich elakoyech. I'm sorry, whoa, I just went to Lachadodi. A different verse we're going to talk about. What do we say over there is Sus Tosis. We tell the woman and the couple that you should know the 5th blessing. The barren woman will surely exult and be glad in gathering her children to herself joyfully. So simply speaking, what does it mean? Under the chuppah, she's barren. Now she's married, so we're making a blessing. Definitely, futuristically, you'll have children, you'll gather them together. That's what it means simply. But that's not what Kabbalah says. Kabbalah says, read the sentence correctly. Read it as it says. The barren mother will rejoice in gathering her children. If she's barren, she's not a mother. If she's a mother, she's not barren. So the whole blessing doesn't make sense. Thus, we're going to go into the mystical world. In the mystical world, mother refers to what? You've heard this from me so many times already. The emanation of understanding. What does the verse in Hallel say? Eim habanim smechim. The mother of sons is joyful. What does Kabbalah say? Mother is understanding, offspring is emotions. In the human life, the way it should be is, the journey of the human life is, that our emotions should be the byproducts and the offspring of our intellect. Our higher intellect should be directing us to have emotions. If our higher intellect sees that the way of God and closeness to God is good, then you have a desire to do that. If we're taught that this and this can cause, God forbid, spiritual pain, so that creates fear. We step away from that. Thus, all of the mitzvahs, we have 613 mitzvahs, right? 248 positive, 365 negative. So the 248 positives are all driven by the offspring of love. I do for God, for I love God. And why do I heed the prohibitions? Because I'm afraid to be disconnected from God. And I know that a sin, the ultimate purgatory of a sin, is the mere fact that I'm disconnecting from God. So the intellect is the mother, understanding specifically, wisdom is father, understanding is mother. Right? I shared with you last time, right? What does it say? Our sages tell us, Bina Yisera Nitn Leisha, an extra measurement of understanding goes to the woman. So the mother is understanding. Not a product of understanding is that, what simply speaking, let's make it practical. If I'm going to sit and study, concentrate, meditate, focus, personalize how God is life, how God is my protector, how God is my provider, how God is my director, and how God does this all with kindness, infinite kindness and compassion, even when I don't deserve it. What feeling am I going to have for God? Love. What happens when I start thinking of standing at the point of the Grand Canyon or Mount Everest or one of the other wonders of the earth, and I'm going to realize, I'm going to concentrate, I'm going to study, I'm going to internalize the greatness and the exaltedness of God, infinite. You know, when you stand in the face of ultimate greatness, you don't feel love. What do you feel? Fear and awe. In other words, intellect, primarily understanding, is supposed to be the mother of offspring. And the offspring is the emotions. So now let's go ahead and see what's going on here. What does it mean? Eim habanim semecha, the mother of sons, is happy. So now let's go back to the blessing by the chuppah. What happened by the chuppah? We talk about the barren mother gathering her children. So what does that mean spiritually? understanding is mother, and feelings are offspring. So on one hand, we're calling her the barren mother, that this understanding did not produce feelings. And on the other hand, we're saying, will rejoice in the ingathering of her children, i.e. offsprings. What's going on here? A paradox. Either she's a barren woman or she's gathering her children. Either this intellectual study bore emotions or it didn't. So far so good? Okay? To understand this, we're going to go to the next step. The homemaker. The only way that this paradox, that dichotomy of a barren mother gathering children, the mere words barren mother, can only make sense when the woman is a homemaker. Now let's talk about this. Understanding is a homemaker. What does it mean, a homemaker? So you should know that the three necessities of human life is what? Food, clothing, shelter, right? So you should know that in Kabbalah we define these three necessities as they are to the soul, and what service we do that provides us our spiritual needs. The spiritual needs of food, the spiritual needs of clothing, and the spiritual needs of shelter. Okay? Let's focus for a moment on shelter. When the mother provides shelter for her offspring, there's two parts of the shelter. Number one, shelter is here to protect us from outside dangers. Number two, it's here to provide nourishment and nurturing inside the home. What does that mean spiritually? What does it mean in the work of prayer? What it means is that we have to first create the outside boundaries to protect us. Then we work on nurturing and building the home inside. What this means to us is as follows. Before understanding can create the ultimate process of offspring, she first must experience what it means to be barren of any foreign offspring. Let's define it more clearly. Love that's driven by the animalistic soul's paradigm of life, of pleasure, all driven by the egocentric. The love that's driven from the animalistic soul's paradigm is unhealthy as it is impure. The fear that's driven by the animalistic soul's anxieties, insecurity, definition of lack, those fears are as unhealthy as they are impure. And thus in building shelter, what the mother, i.e. the intellect, is doing, it's first defining the outside boundaries. The mother that cannot be a homemaker, i.e. first and foremost decide boundaries of who we are and who's outside and who's inside. In prayer, that means that first we have to make sure that we're not driven by the egocentric drive of emotions, the egocentric definition of what is good, pleasurable, afraid, pain, lacking. And then we can define what it means on the inside, where feelings do get nurtured and grown. Okay? That is the definition of the barren woman gathering children. Barren from the outside, gathering her children in the inside. So to understand this, we're now going to talk about pottery. In making a vessel, Hasidus and Kabbalah define that there are two primary steps. Chakika mibachutz, chakika mibifnim. First, you have to define the outside of the vessel. Cut away everything that doesn't belong there. After you cut away from the outside, everything that doesn't belong there, then we'll cut away from the inside to create the receptor place to receive. Let's talk about prayer. In prayer, the first primary part of prayer is what? Psuke de Zimra. What does Psuke de Zimra mean? It means verses of praise. Simply speaking, the sages instituted that before you're going to say, "Hear, O God, hear, O Israel, God is our God is one," and love God with all your heart, with all your might, with all your soul, right? All your soul, all your might, you have to first have a very serious paradigm shift from I to God. In order to help us with this paradigm shift, the sages instituted that before you begin the Shema or the blessing of the Shema, you should read verses of praise. Verses of praise talks about what? The greatness and the kindness of God to the universe, to our forefathers, and to us when we were taken out of Egypt. After you do all of that, then you do the Baruch Hu, and then you go into the blessings of Shema and the Shema and loving God. Right? Everything sounds good. Now let me share with you something. The last piece of the Psukkah de Zimra is what? It's singing Az Yashir. In Az Yashir there's a verse where we sing to God, Azi v'zimrat ya. Sorry, saying God there. Azi means the strength, v'zimras means the song, the praise. That's how Onkelos defines it. By the way, you'll see I put a link. I always put in links when I make names, when I mention names. Onkelos was a famous emperor's Avrahom's nephew who converted, went to Israel, and he actually is the most famous translation of the Torah. On most Chumashes, you have the Chumash here, and on the side you have Targum Onkelos. So this Onkelos, he says, just to find the word Aziv Zimrat, my strength and my praise, referring to God. Comes along Rashi, and Rashi he says, I see what Onkelos is saying, but I disagree. And he brings proof from the vowels, the pronunciation. He says no. This word, Zimra, comes from a different reading where it says, Lo tizmor karmacha. It's a verse prohibiting the pruning of the vineyard in a certain case. Lizamer aritzim means to prune the thorns, to prune that which doesn't belong there. Now let's go back. Psukkah de Zimra means what? Verses of pruning. Chatika mibachutz, cut away from the outside what doesn't belong there. Now let's go to the chuppah for a moment. You've heard me share with you more than once. In the chuppah, two things happen. Before you can get married, you have to become betrothed, erusin. That's why you should know the chuppah really has two parts. The first part is we put on the ring, right? And he makes a blessing, one blessing, then puts on the ring. What does the man say to the woman when he puts the ring on her finger? Hareat mikudeshet li. You are hereby be mikudeshet. The word mikudeshet, as you know, comes from the word kadosh. Kadosh means holy. That has to take place before you do the nisu'im. The nisu'im is the 7 blessings, and the husband and wife, the newlyweds walk into a room. You have 2 witnesses that they're there alone. He takes her from her father's home to his home. That's the wedding part. But first goes the betrothal part. And the betrothal part is all about what? Hareat mikudeshet li. What are these two? What is the groom and bride agreeing to? What are they committing to when they say, you will be holy unto me? So our sages define the word holy, consecrated, as separated. Before you can marry me, you have to agree that you're going to separate yourself from everyone else. That means in the marriage process, we first do the chakika mibachutz before we get into the chakika mibifnim. First you have to cut away everything else. That's the first thing you do when you build a house. You define the outside from the inside from the outside. And the outside doesn't get in. Thus, the first step of making a vessel is to cut away the outside. What that clearly means for us today is that we're going to commit, not only that I'm going to love you, God. Before I can even commit, I'm going to love you, God, I have to commit that I'm not going to allow all the foreigners that stand up against you, God, to live in my house. Thus, before we can say Shema Yisrael, we have to have verses of pruning. Before we can get married, we have to be betrothed. First, we have to commit to each other that everyone else is outside. Then we can commit to each other that you and I will become holy one. Holy as in W-H. Thus, you see, the first part is to become barren. To become barren means to cut away the feelings that are foreign. The feelings that are egocentric. Both love and fear and compassion. Clearly share with you. I was sitting in Sarah's Pizza of blessed memory, the one on 163rd Street. And over there, I'm sitting right after the whole story that happened, that they finally, in Iraq, they finally caught. And I hear two teenagers talking, how they feel sorry for our dear friend in Iraq. You realize what's happening here? You realize that terrorism exists in the world only because good people not only stand aside, but have compassion. That compassion is as unhealthy as it is impure. It's just a fact. We don't like to say it, but it's a fact. Politically incorrect, excuse me. So before we can cut away the unhealthy and impure and inappropriate feelings, you can't start having a wholeness of healthy and pure feelings. Thus, the first step is cut the outside of the vessel. After that, goes stage number 2. Now you can start scooping out, etching it out from the inside. You can create the receptor. What is that? That is the Shema Yisrael, which leads to the healthy feelings of love God your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. But what is the fulfillment of that? The inside nourishing. We already spoke about the barrenness, but now we have to rejoice in bringing the children in, gathering. So besides the Shema and the V'ahavta, primarily it happens by the Amida. How does it happen by the Amida? Because when I stand up and I'm about to ask God for my needs, and then I first say, Adoshem Sfatai Tiftach, my master, open up my lips that they speak your praise. And thus we understand that right now we're going to focus not only on my monthly bills, but let me stand. If I love you, God, I want to know your needs. And your needs is that we should heal the world. Suddenly the prayer for healing has a spiritual dimension. The need of God. There's a fractured universe. When there's a fractured universe, if God is everything and everything is God, there's a fractured God. And when there's poverty in the world, that means that God's not at home, because God is not poverty. That means there's concealment. That means there's contraction. That means that a piece of God is fighting, disconnecting, unaware that He is a piece of God. Thus we start praying for God's needs. And what happens when we pray for God's needs? Thus we're now connecting to a total different dimension. Thus we're having the vessel was cut away from the outside, barren. The vessel was cut in the inside so that it can receive. Because once we have God's needs fulfilled, automatically there's no poverty, there's no sicknesses. They manifest themselves physically in our world. That's how we create a vessel. So understand that the primary experience of the human being is emotions. The primary reason for human emotions is to allow us to have a relationship. The primary reason of a relationship is to have connection and to receive. Thus, we're talking about with God. When I'm having a relationship with God, when I'm able to cut away loving that which does not like God, fearing that which doesn't trust God, and rather I'm having healthy, pure emotions, nurtured, to the point where God's needs become my needs. For when His needs are fulfilled, everyone's happy. How do they say? Ain't mama happy? Ain't no one happy. Now let's go to the next level. The final statement, final concept before we close it up. What happens when you make a vessel? What happens when we do the whole thing? First is a pruning, etching from the outside. Shema, Amida, etching from the inside. We're now a vessel. What do we have? Now let's go to that line that I slipped before and told you from the Chadodi. Here is the 6th stanza. What do we see over there? Yoses alayich elokayich kimsos chatan al kala. God will rejoice with us as a groom rejoices with his bride. For we are the bride of God. Now let's get to a little bit numerology and Kabbalah here. Yosis, that's the word it uses for rejoice. right? Yossis is spelled how? Yud Shin, Yud Shin. Shin, Sin. I'm using it the same way. What does that equal? 10, 300, 10, 300. What's the number then? 620. What is the supernal crown in Hebrew? How do you call supernal crown? Keter. Keter is spelled how? Kaf Tov Resh. 20, 400, 200. 620. So we're connecting here with what? With the supernal crown. Oh, but 1 second. There is a Gemara. It's actually the closing of the whole Talmud and Tractate Uksin. And over there it says that you should know that God is destined to have each righteous person inherit 310 worlds. As the verse says, O Havai, my beloved, my love, those who love me, Inchalu Yesh. They will inherit Yesh. Yesh is how many letters? Yud Shin. What does Yud Shin equal? 310. So we have the Yossis and we have the Yesh. The Gemara, the Talmud tells us that in the world to come, we're going to inherit 310. What did this mimer tell us? If we pray like a mensch, the outside, the inside, we make a vessel out of ourselves. In this world, we're going to have 620. No. So to understand this, we need to understand. The supernal crown has an exterior and an interior. If you want to know the Kabbalistic names, just to put it under your belt, the exterior is called long faces. The interior is called ancient days. Atik Yoimim. Now, 310 is talking only about the exterior of the supernal crown. 620 is talking also about the interior of the crown. No, what is that supposed to mean? Let's go back to the necessities. The crown is encompassing. Encompassing is not food. It's garments and it's shelter. Garments is the exterior. Shelter is the higher dynamics. Here when I talk about exterior and interior, I don't mean outside and inside as much as I mean higher and lower. What is a garment? A garment has to be made to size. A garment that's too big is not useful. Let's talk about this Kabbalistically, spiritually. What does that mean? What that means is that the external, the 310, has to be to size of the infinite light's ray. What is the top of the infinite light's ray? Wisdom and understanding. King Solomon in Proverbs says, acquire wisdom, acquire understanding. How do you say the word acquire in Hebrew? Kana. What does kana spell? Kuf nun hey. 155. Thus wisdom is 155 and understanding is 155. 155 plus 155 equals 310. Now we understand why the exterior of the supernal crown is fit to 310. All beautiful Kabbalistic. But let's be practical. You know what it really means to us? If the garment has to fit, that means that ultimately speaking, the garment is part and parcel of the evolution process of the predestined infinite light's astrological mazal. If it fits, it's cut down to size, then it's part of the Hishtalshalut. Hishtalshalut means the evolution of the chain. That means that the exterior garment is all part of the predestined astrological mazal. When we talk about 620, that means we're talking about the ancient days. That means we're talking about the internal essence of the supernal crown, which represents shelter. The one thing that's beautiful about shelter is it doesn't need to be made size. Little short Napoleon had a huge, gigantic palace. Because the house, the shelter, houses the small and the big equally. What does that mean to us mystically? That means to us that right now we're not talking about something which is cut to size. In other words, that which is part of already the evolution process of predestined astrological luck. Rather, we're talking here about what God told Abraham. Go out. Go out of what? Not just go out of wisdom and understanding, i.e. food. Go out of garments. Go out of 310. Go out of seeing only the exterior part of the supernal crown. Don't see only the 310 which is cut to size. Don't just see how you're already Avram and she's already Sarai. Because if you can get past your zodiac, you're about to see that I'm going to turn you into Avrohom. and her into Sarah. Now we're talking about a whole different mazal. Thus, ultimately speaking, when we're willing to do prayers, and the primary focus of prayers according to Kabbalah is to work on your emotions, which is the relationship you have with God. He who understands God doesn't have a relationship with God. He who loves God has a relationship with God. He who fears God has a relationship with God. Thus, prayer is all about developing your emotions. Developing your emotions means first become barren. Stop wanting. Stop wanting the external. Stop wanting the physical. Stop feeding your fears, your physical fears. Stop feeding the eye. Cut that away. Then start working on the Shema Yisrael. Then start working on the Amidah, which starts with the verse, my master, you open my lips. Allow me to speak your praise. When we etch away from the outside and the inside of ourselves, i.e. primarily our emotions, we have become a vessel. A vessel to what? A vessel to what God told Avrohom. Go out. Go out of the 10 faculties. Go out of the 10 emanations. Go out of the supernal crown as its 310, only exterior garments. Come into my home. When you do that, you've just transcended beyond just connecting with the garments, i.e. luck, as it is in the constellations under which I was born. And then, whatever happens, happens. Hey, what do you want from me? I was born on that. I was born on a bad day. That's it. My life is destined to be mediocre at best. Oh yeah. Or we can go out of that. We can pray. We can redefine who we're connecting to. We can redefine that we're connecting to the essence, interior of the crown. 620. By the way, just for your records, 613 biblical commandments plus 7 rabbinical commandments equals how much? 620. Go beyond it. Not just the rules. It's the rabbinical. I don't want to it's the rabbinical. I got the biblical. All right, then you're stuck with 613. But can you go beyond that? Can you go to 620? Can you cut the outside of what I do and I don't do? I like this, I don't like this. This I'm afraid of, this I'm not afraid of. Can we focus on God? Can we redefine the center of our universe? When we do that, we've made a vessel, the art of pottery. When we make the art of pottery, then we don't have to worry at all at what our predestined astrological luck was about. Thus, we embrace the deeper statement of the Gemara. Ein mazel Yisrael. There is no mazel to Yisrael. Let's take it to Kabbalah and Chassidus. Ayin, the ultimate essence of nothingness, which defies anything that we call something. That essence, that 620, that is my mazal. That's the power. Okay, guys, let's close it up. In closing, you know, in closing we get practical, because until now we were floating. Now, praying and working our feelings is not, but it's spiritual. So let's get really practical. In closing, what we are learning here is that successful people not only know what they do want, but also first cut away what they don't want. When you listen to and read the works of Anthony Robbins and all other inspirational speakers or writers, you will always hear the difference between those who only know what they do want and those who also know what they don't want. The difference is that only those who also know what they don't want, in other words, they are willing to give away what they have to in order to become who they do want to be, only these individuals actually get to feel, to taste, to smell what they want. Thus, what they want becomes real. Shikoyach.